Hello, my name is Salsabila. I'm from International Relations major and currently I'm IISMA Zagreb Awardee 2022. As you can see, my home university is Universitas Mulawarman and currently I'm University of Zagreb, Croatia. In this video, I think I'm going to show you what course did I choose while during my study and what makes me interested about that. Continue on. In here I also currently enrolled in like 4 different faculties, but we don't talk further about that. Just know that one of my major faculty is like philosophy, and that's like I forgot anyway. I need to search for it. Yeah, philosophy is like a faculty of humanities and social science, and in that faculty, like there is one course that I'm really interested about, and that is Anthropology of Conflict and Violence. The reason why I chose Anthropology of Violence and Conflict as one of my course is because when you want to admit some of course you want, you got actually some description on that, and then the description on that course was like, in this course the students are being introduced to basic ideas and theories of violence and conflict in humanities and social science, especially cultural anthropology, as well as theoretical perspective on different forms of violence. Also, the course will give insight to different ethnographic research of violence and conflict, ethical problems of research in violent settings, post-conflict areas, and subject with experience of violence and conflict. Being international relations major, of course, this was like, oh, this makes sense with my major. I should choose this. So yeah, I choose it in hoping that, oh, probably it's just going to, like talking about conflicts, violence, and then give some case study and we talk about it. And I was wrong. It was not that. Continue on the next segment of how is the anthropology of violence and conflict going on. So, like before I said in the last one, where I said that I was wrong because it's not like what I expected, it's more than what I expected, to be honest. So, when we go to the class, mine was online to be honest, but like you say it like class. When we go to the class, the professor just gave me like these 3 books, one theoretical, and the 2 is like a case study. Now this seems a bit odd or weird to me because I usually just given by like a theoretical and not something like case study, but in this case we were giving case study about violence and conflict. At first when I read about it, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it will talk about some violence. Like when we heard about violence, we will say that, oh, this would be like a physical harm, or when some people hurt each other, or maybe it was like a state conflict. I was hoping to that, but yeah, the professor gave me 3 books. Like there is like the farmers one, Violence in War and Peace, and the theoretical one, I will give you that. Now, when I read this book, it was like pretty interesting because when I kept reading about it, it's not really showing any violence at all. Instead, it was like more of suffering instead of violence. Like I read about the farmer, the Violence in War and Peace. I think the title was like, here is it. The title was about Unsuffering and Structural Violence, a View from Below. So basically in this book there was like 3 or 2 stories about suffering. In my view, when I first read it, like this is not violence at all. This is more like suffering. Like in this one of the story, I think about the woman. The woman was like in need to be like prostitute herself in order for her to survive or maybe to climb ranks so she will get out from the poverty. And then the second story is about a Cho story, that's the name. He was poor too, like struggling in poverty, and he wanted to get out from that, so he tried to get a better job, but instead getting a better job, he actually got into the sudden conflict of coup in his country and died because of that. Now when I kept reading this, I was kept thinking this is more about suffering and not violence. Like where's the violence in this part? Till the part I read the end of the book, I will quote that poverty wields its exertive influence at every stage of human life, from the moment of conception to the grave. It conspires with the most deadly and painful disease to bring wretched existence to all those who suffer from it. See, at this part is what I say, like it's still suffering. Like where is the violence in here? Like I expect like maybe the violence came when about the coup, like the military do like discrimination to the people. That is violence in my head. So after I read this, I talked to my professor about it. My professor asked me about what do you think about this book, or like what do you get from this book, and I told her that when I read this, all I could think is just like about suffering and suffering. There's nothing like violence at all. And my professor actually said to me, that is the violence. Violence is not something just like a physical harm or something you do. Sometimes what we perceive as not violence is violence to someone else. In this case, it's like the Jojo and the woman one. What they're like actually having in this life was actually a violence in that side. Like poverty is a violence from them. Like they suffer from this violence, and that is what called violence. Like that is the anthropology of the violence in this class. And also, like I also made some notes about that. Yes, in that story, there's so much like really hard feeling, cause like this story is like really no joke about suffering. Cause like in the JoJo story, when she got hurt and got killed because he just want to get out from the poverty, but it's like got killed. That's really heartbreaking, you know. And then on to the next book. It's still the same book, Violence in War and Peace, but instead it's about defeat under and the carpet coffin, the social production of indifference to child death. When I read that, it still come to my mind that like, oh no, this is like another suffering, not violence. But then my professor said again to me, that is also the form of violence. When a mother lost the baby, that's a sort of violence. Just because we said it's not violent doesn't mean it's perceived as a violence. Violence to everyone is a different kind of matter. Like what I felt and what you felt about violence might be different, but at the end, it's still violence that we have. So yeah, that's really pretty interesting to me, because all of these years that I studied in my campus or my university, violence is something when you physically harm each other, or maybe when you inflict some wounds to each other. But in this part, violence is something that came from the poverty itself, and it happens to you. Like the one that did it is not someone else, or it's not physical, but actually because of your condition. That is the violence what do. So the roots of the violence is not because of person or the human nature. No, it's more of the condition of itself, and I think that's pretty interesting. Oh yeah, the another fun thing about this part was like we don't really have any literature, or what, you know, what is it called? I forgot what it's called. Like our professor in this course, I mean, we don't really have like a really set schedule. Like at this week we will learn about this, at this week we learn about this, and this week no, we don't have something like that, because this is like an anthropology. We learn something by each day. Like I will give you some material, you will give me some thoughts about it, and that's it. So we don't really have like a really fitted subject. So if I have to say like what in this course that I really like the most, is like I like it all, because violence in here is not just like killing someone, but violence in here like could be child death, or maybe someone suffering, someone poverty, or rape even include in this, or like whatever is it that could be suffering could also be included in violence. And I guess it's pretty interesting. But I guess that's all, because I think there's like a limit one, and I think I really passed that one. So yeah, see you later guys.